The distress beacon pulsed through the void of space like a dying heartbeat, its electromagnetic cry for help reaching across the star systems with desperate urgency. Captain ZYX-Thera of the Galactic Confederation vessel Serenity's Dawn received the transmission while conducting routine patrol duties near the Outer Rim territories. The message was simple, transmitted in the universal emergency code that every spacefaring civilization recognized: SOS. Navigation, plot a course to the transmission source, ZYX-Thera commanded, her forearms dancing across the control interface with practiced efficiency. The captain belonged to the Velthari race, beings known throughout the galaxy for their diplomatic nature and peaceful exploration. Like most civilized species in the Confederation, they had evolved on worlds with stable climates, predictable weather patterns, and gentle ecosystems that fostered cooperation rather than competition. "Course plotted, Captain," replied Lieutenant Quindar from the navigation station. "The signal appears to be coming from the Sol system, approximately 47 light-years from our current position. Estimated travel time at maximum warp, 16 hours. The bridge fell silent for a moment. Every crew member knew about the Sol system, though few had ever ventured there. It was listed in the Confederation's databases as a Deathworld, a planetary classification reserved for the most hostile and dangerous worlds in the galaxy. These were places where evolution had taken a violent turn, producing ecosystems so brutal that they forged life forms of unimaginable resilience and aggression. "Sir," Communications Officer Zelnara spoke up hesitantly, "are you certain we should respond? The regulations clearly state that Deathworld inhabitants are to be avoided except in cases of extreme emergency." Captain ZYX-Thera's expression remained stoic, but her inner arms trembled slightly, a sign of stress among her people. "A distress call is an extreme emergency, Lieutenant. We are bound by Confederation law and basic decency to render aid to any sentient being in need. Besides," she added, checking her console, "the signal is weak. Whatever happened to them, they might not survive long enough for a better-equipped rescue vessel to arrive." The crew of the Serenity's Dawn had heard the stories about Deathworlders, particularly the humans of Sol 3, called Earth. These beings had evolved on a planet so harsh that it regularly attempted to kill its own inhabitants through natural disasters, predators, diseases, and extreme weather. The result was a species that the Confederation had classified as potentially hazardous, creatures so adapted to violence and survival that they were considered dangerous to peaceful galactic society. According to the files, humans were omnivores who had climbed to the top of their planet's food chain through intelligence, tool use, and an almost insane willingness to fight anything that threatened them. They were one of the few species in the galaxy that practiced something called persistence hunting, literally chasing their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Even more disturbing, they were one of the rare species that actually seemed to enjoy physical competition and conflict, engaging in activities they called sports that often involved intentionally injuring one another. But despite their fearsome reputation, they were still sentient beings, and the Confederation's charter was clear: all sentient life deserved protection and aid when possible. "Engaging warp drive," announced Chief Engineer Mordak. "ETA to Sol system, 15 hours, 53 minutes. As the Serenity's Dawn streaked through hyperspace toward the distant solar system, Captain ZYX-Thera couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The distress signal had been brief and lacking in details, containing only basic information: a ship designation, UES vengeance, coordinates, and the emergency code. No explanation of what had gone wrong, no request for specific assistance, no indication of casualties or ship status. Hours passed in relative quiet as the crew went about their duties, but the tension was palpable. They were traveling toward one of the most dangerous corners of known space to rescue members of a species that most of the galaxy preferred to avoid. The Velthari were naturally empathetic beings, and the thought of any creature suffering activated their deepest protective instincts. But they were also practical, and the idea of encountering humans in distress was genuinely terrifying. "Captain," Zelnara called out as they neared their destination, "we're receiving multiple transmissions from the Sol system. The distress beacon is still active, but there are also what appear to be military communications on various frequencies." "Military communications?" ZYX-Thera felt her stomach drop. "Are we walking into a war zone?" "I'm not sure, sir. The translations are difficult. Human language is quite complex, and many of their military terms don't have direct equivalents in Confederation standard. but it sounds like there's significant activity throughout the system. Drop out of warp at the edge of the system, the captain ordered. I want to assess the situation before we commit to anything. The Serenity's Dawn emerged from hyperspace near the orbit of Pluto, the outermost dwarf planet in the Sol system. Immediately, their sensors began detecting massive amounts of artificial energy signatures throughout the system: ships, stations, weapons platforms, and structures that weren't in any of their database files. "By the Star Mother's grace," whispered Science Officer Tim Aaron, staring at his readings in disbelief. "Captain, I'm detecting over 3,000 artificial objects in this system. Ships ranging from small fighters to massive vessels over 5 kilometers long. And they're all human." SCI-FI studied the tactical display with growing amazement. According to their files, humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel within the last 50 years. They should be a young spacefaring civilization with perhaps a few dozen ships and some basic orbital infrastructure. Instead, the Sol system appeared to be the heart of a massive military-industrial complex. "The distress signal is coming from the inner system," navigation reported. "Near the fourth planet, Mars, according to our star charts." "Very well. Proceed at half impulse, and broadcast our identification on all frequencies. Make it clear that we're responding to a distress call and mean no harm." As they traveled deeper into the system, more details became clear. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. Every planet and large moon hosted military installations, shipyards, or mining operations. Asteroid belts had been carved up and converted into defensive platforms bristling with weapons that their sensors couldn't even identify. And the ships were unlike anything in the Confederation fleet. Where Confederation vessels were designed for exploration, diplomacy, and scientific research, every human ship they detected was clearly built for war. They were angular, armored, and covered in weapon emplacements. Even their smallest fighters carried more firepower than many Confederation cruisers. "Incoming transmission," Zelnara announced. It's from the human distress signal." "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was distinctly human, deeper and more guttural than most Confederation species, with an accent that their translation systems struggled to parse. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Force. We appreciate your response to our distress call, but I need to warn you that this system is currently under martial law due to an ongoing crisis. Please maintain your current heading and prepare to be escorted to a designated rendezvous point." "This is Captain SCI-FI of the Confederation vessel Serenity's Dawn," she replied. "We received your emergency beacon and are here to render assistance." "What is the nature of your emergency?" There was a long pause before the human responded, and when she did, her voice carried a weight that made SCI-FI's skin crawl. "Captain, we appreciate your offer of assistance, but I'm afraid this situation is beyond anything the Confederation has experience with. 3 days ago, we made contact with a hostile alien force that has been systematically destroying colonies throughout the Outer Rim. They've declared their intention to exterminate all inferior species and claim this galaxy for themselves. We're currently preparing for the largest battle in human history." The bridge of the Serenity's Dawn fell silent. First contact with a hostile alien species was every spacefarer's nightmare, but the humans seemed to be treating it like just another day at the office. "Admiral," SCI-FI said carefully, "perhaps we should coordinate with Confederation Command." "Our combined fleets could." "Captain," Admiral Chen interrupted, "with all due respect, your people are not equipped for this kind of warfare. These aliens, they call themselves the hegemony, have weapons and technology that make our current ships look like toys. They've already destroyed 4 Confederation outposts without breaking stride. This isn't a job for explorers and diplomats." As if summoned by her words, the sensors began screaming warnings. Massive energy signatures were appearing at the edge of the system, ships dropping out of hyperspace in formations that spoke of military precision and overwhelming force. "Admiral," SCI-FI said urgently, "we're detecting multiple large vessels entering the system. Over 200 contacts and climbing." "We see them," came the grim reply. "Those are hegemony dreadnoughts. Each one is the size of a small moon and carries enough firepower to glass a planet. Captain, I strongly recommend you withdraw to a safe distance." Things are about to get very messy. But SCI-FI found herself unable to look away from the tactical display. The approaching alien ships were indeed massive, some of them larger than Confederation space stations. They moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with an almost organic sheen that suggested biotechnology far in advance of anything the galaxy had seen. "Admiral," she said, "how many ships do you have to face them?" "Currently?" "About 800 combat vessels of various classes, plus orbital defense platforms around every major body in the system. It's not nearly enough, but it's what we have." 800 ships. The entire Confederation fleet numbered less than 2,000 vessels, and most of those were explorers or cargo haulers. The humans had built a war fleet in less than 50 years that rivaled the combined space forces of 1,000 worlds. "How?" SCI-FI whispered. "How did you build so many ships so quickly?" The laugh that came back was distinctly human, a sound somewhere between amusement and madness. "Captain, when someone threatens to exterminate your species, you find resources you didn't know you had. Every human world has been working around the clock for 3 years, turning out ships and weapons as fast as we can build them. We've converted passenger liners into missile platforms, turned cargo haulers into carriers, and built weapons that would make your ethics committees weep. When survival is on the line, amazing things become possible." The alien fleet was entering the outer system now, and the humans were moving to intercept them. SCI-FI watched in fascination as the human formations deployed with a coordination that spoke of countless hours of practice and preparation. Fighter squadrons swarmed around larger vessels like insects protecting a hive, while massive battleships moved into formation with their weapons already charging. "This is Admiral Chen to all units," came the broadcast on an open channel. "Today, we face an enemy that believes we are nothing more than animals to be slaughtered. They think our world is just another stepping stone in their march across the galaxy. They are about to learn why predators avoid Deathworlds." The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness between the worlds like a newborn star. The alien weapons were indeed fearsome, beams of coherent energy that could slice through asteroids like a knife through paper, and some kind of projectile weapon that seemed to bend space itself around its targets. But the humans responded with their own arsenal of destruction. Their missiles were things of beauty and terror, guided by AI systems that treated dodging and countermeasures as puzzles to be solved rather than obstacles to avoid. Their kinetic weapons accelerated chunks of metal to significant fractions of light speed, striking with the force of nuclear explosions. And their energy weapons. "Captain," Science Officer Tim Aaron said in a hushed voice, "I'm reading temperatures of over 50 million degrees from some of those human weapon discharges. They're creating miniature suns and throwing them at the enemy." The battle was unlike anything in the Confederation's military databases. Both sides fought with a ferocity and technological sophistication that made their own defensive fleets look like children with toys. Ships died in explosions that could be seen from planets away, and the very fabric of space seemed to ripple under the assault of weapons that pushed the boundaries of physics. But what truly impressed SCI-FI was not the technology, but the humans themselves. As she listened to their communications, she heard something that was almost unknown in Confederation space: warriors who were genuinely eager for battle. "Bravo Squadron, you've got 3 fighters on your 6. Copy that, Control. Let's see how they handle a little human hospitality. This is Dreadnought Righteous Fury. We're taking heavy fire but holding position. Give us everything you've got." "Roger, Fury. Incoming fire support. Try not to die before we get there." They joked in the face of death. They laughed while flying through fields of destructive energy that would atomize any normal being. They treated warfare like one of their beloved sports, complete with competition and camaraderie. And they were winning. The alien hegemony had obviously expected to face a typical spacefaring species, cautious beings who would attempt to negotiate or flee when faced with overwhelming force. Instead, they found themselves fighting creatures that seemed to view impossible odds as a personal challenge. When human ships were damaged, they didn't retreat. They rammed themselves into enemy vessels, turning their own destruction into weapons. When their fighters ran out of ammunition, the pilots used their ships as guided missiles, sacrificing themselves to take out larger targets. And when human ground installations came under fire, they responded not with surrender but with weapons so devastating that they turned sections of space into zones of twisted physics where matter itself seemed to scream. "Captain," Zelnara called out, "I'm receiving a transmission from one of the alien vessels. It's directed at us, not the humans. Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was utterly alien, a collection of harmonics and subsonic frequencies that their translation systems struggled to interpret. "Confederation vessel, you will withdraw immediately. This system contains a plague species that must be eliminated for the good of all civilized life. Do not interfere with this cleansing operation." ZYX-Thera looked at her crew, seeing her own shock reflected in their faces. The alien hegemony was demanding they abandon the humans to their fate. "Alien vessel," she replied, "the beings in this system are sentient creatures who have requested aid. The Confederation does not abandon those in need. You do not understand. These creatures are an abomination. They come from a world so violent that it has shaped them into perfect killers. They know only war and destruction. They are a threat to every peaceful species in the galaxy." "That's not true," ZYX-Thera said firmly. "They're fighting to defend their homes and families. Any species would do the same." The alien's response carried what could only be described as contempt. "No, Confederation fool. Watch them fight. Watch how they smile as they kill. Watch how they turn their own deaths into weapons. These are not beings defending their homes, these are monsters who have found an excuse to unleash their true nature." Despite herself, ZYX-Thera found her eyes drawn back to the battle. And she had to admit, there was something disturbing about the human approach to warfare. They fought with an enthusiasm that was almost cheerful, treating the destruction of enemy ships like achievements in a game. Their communications were filled with expressions of joy when they scored kills, and disappointment when they missed opportunities to inflict damage. But as she watched, she also saw something else. When human ships were destroyed, their comrades mourned. When civilians were threatened, human warriors threw themselves into harm's way without hesitation. When their own people were in danger, they fought with a desperate fury that spoke of love as much as aggression. "They're not monsters," she said aloud. "They're just different." The battle raged for hours, spreading throughout the inner system as both fleets maneuvered for advantage. The humans had turned every piece of space debris into a potential weapon, every orbital installation into a fortress, and every ship into a mobile platform of destruction. But the aliens kept coming, wave after wave of vessels that seemed to care nothing for their own losses. It was during the height of the battle that ZYX-Thera witnessed something that changed her understanding of humanity forever. A human destroyer, the Indomitable, had been caught between 3 alien dreadnoughts and was taking catastrophic damage. Its hull was breached in dozens of places, its weapons were failing, and its crew was clearly dying. By any reasonable military doctrine, the ship should have surrendered or attempted to retreat. Instead, Captain James Morrison's voice came through the communications clear and strong. "This is the Indomitable to all human vessels. We're done for, but we're not going out alone. We're going to ram the lead dreadnought and try to take out their command ship. Tell my wife I love her, and tell command that it's been an honor to serve with the finest warriors in the galaxy." The destroyer turned toward the largest alien vessel and accelerated to ramming speed. But as it did so, something unexpected happened. Every human ship in the area, fighters, cruisers, even massive battleships, turned toward the Indomitable and began firing everything they had at the alien vessels surrounding it. "This is Admiral Chen to all units," came the broadcast. "No one dies alone today. Cover the Indomitable's run. Make those alien bastards pay for every meter." The aliens, clearly not understanding what was happening, focused their fire on the crippled destroyer. But the other human ships absorbed the worst of the damage, sacrificing themselves to protect a vessel that was already doomed. It made no tactical sense, served no strategic purpose, and violated every principle of rational warfare. And it was the most beautiful thing ZYX-Thera had ever seen. The Indomitable struck the alien dreadnought at nearly half the speed of light, and the explosion lit up half the solar system. Both ships vanished in a ball of plasma that briefly outshone the sun itself. But in that moment of destruction, ZYX-Thera understood something fundamental about the species she was watching. Humans didn't fight just to win. They fought to protect each other. Their aggression, their violence, their seeming love of warfare, it all came from the same source as their capacity for sacrifice and love. They were a species that would literally give their lives for strangers, and their willingness to destroy their enemies came from the same place as their willingness to die for their friends. Alien vessel, she broadcast to the hegemony fleet, you're wrong about the humans. They're not monsters. They're guardians. You are infected by their presence, the alien replied. When this system is cleansed, you will understand the necessity of what we do. The battle continued to rage, but now SCI-FI was watching it with different eyes. Every human ship that died took at least one alien vessel with it, and often more. Their fighters swarmed enemy vessels like antibodies attacking an infection, caring nothing for their own survival as long as they could protect the larger ships. Their capital ships fought like wounded animals, growing more dangerous as they took damage rather than less. And gradually, impossibly, they began to win. The alien hegemony had brought overwhelming force to bear against what they thought was a primitive species. Instead, they found themselves fighting creatures that seemed to have turned warfare into an art form. Every human tactic was designed around the assumption that the enemy would be stronger, faster, and more numerous, because that's what they'd evolved to fight on their deadly homeworld. When the aliens tried to use their superior numbers, the humans scattered into small groups that struck from unexpected angles. When the aliens concentrated their forces, the humans used weapons of mass destruction that didn't distinguish between friend and foe, because human ships were built to survive their own weapons. When the aliens tried to target human command ships, they found that every human vessel was capable of independent action, because they came from a species that prized individual initiative over centralized control. Captain, Tim Aaron said quietly, the alien fleet is beginning to withdraw. Indeed, the massive hegemony vessels were pulling back toward the edge of the system, their perfect formations now ragged and broken. They'd lost over half their ships, while the humans had lost perhaps 30% of theirs, a ratio that should have been impossible given the technological disparity. This is Admiral Chen to the Confederation vessel, came the transmission. Thank you for staying to witness this battle. I think it's important that the galaxy knows what happened here today. Admiral, SCI-FI replied, how were you able to defeat such a superior force? The laugh that came back was pure human, tired, satisfied, and slightly manic. Captain, we've been preparing for this fight since the day we learned we weren't alone in the universe. Every human who's ever looked up at the stars has wondered what we'd do if something out there wanted to hurt us. Today, we found out. But even as the words were spoken, SCI-FI's sensors detected something that made her blood freeze. The retreating alien fleet wasn't running away, they were regrouping. And more ships were arriving. Lots more ships. Admiral, she said urgently, I'm detecting massive hyperspace signatures at the system's edge. It looks like, by the Star Mother, it looks like thousands of ships. The pause before Admiral Chen responded told SCI-FI everything she needed to know. We see them, Captain. The hegemony obviously didn't expect us to put up this much of a fight. They're bringing everything they have. Admiral, there must be 10,000 ships out there. Even your fleet can't. Captain, the Admiral interrupted, I need you to send a message to the Confederation Council. Tell them what you've seen here today. Tell them that humanity fought to the last ship to defend our home. And tell them that we're sorry we couldn't do more to help protect the other species they're going to target. SCI-FI felt tears forming in her eyes, a physiological response her species shared with humans. Admiral, we can't just leave you here. There must be something. There is something, Admiral Chen said firmly. You can survive to warn the galaxy. These aliens are going to sweep across known space like a plague, and the Confederation needs to be ready for them. Your people are good beings, Captain, but you're not warriors. You're going to need time to learn how to fight, and we're going to buy you as much time as we can. The alien fleet was enormous, a vast cloud of ships that seemed to blot out the stars themselves. SCI-FI's instruments could barely count them all, and every vessel was larger and more heavily armed than anything in the Confederation fleet. Against such a force, even the humans couldn't possibly survive. This is Admiral Chen to all human vessels, came the broadcast. I won't lie to you, we're outnumbered about 20 to 1, and these aren't the same ships we just fought. These are their frontline units, their best weapons, their most experienced crews. We're probably not going to win this one. ZYX expected panic, despair, or at least grim resignation. Instead, she heard something that would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life, the sound of 800 ship crews cheering. But, Admiral Chen continued over the celebration, we're human beings from the Deathworld called Earth. We've never backed down from a fight in our entire evolutionary history, and we're sure as hell not going to start now. Today, we show this galaxy what happens when someone threatens our home. Today, we teach these aliens why predators learn to fear us. Today, we remind the universe that Earth didn't just make us tough, it made us mean. The human fleet began moving toward the alien armada with what could only be described as eager anticipation. They flew in formation that spoke of absolute trust in each other, their communications filled with jokes, encouragement, and expressions of affection for their fellow warriors. Captain, Zelnara said softly, shouldn't we try to help them? ZYX looked at her crew, peaceful beings who had never fired a weapon in anger, who came from worlds where the greatest dangers were bad weather and minor predators. They were brave, intelligent, and compassionate, but they were not fighters. Against either fleet currently deployed in this system, the Serenity's dawn would last about as long as a soap bubble in a hurricane. We help them by surviving to tell their story, she said finally. All ships, begin immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance. And record everything. As they retreated, ZYX watched the human fleet charge into battle against impossible odds. She watched their fighters dive into formations of alien ships 10 times their size, watched their destroyers ram dreadnoughts rather than be captured, watched their battleships fight on even as they were torn apart by weapons that defied comprehension. And she watched them smile as they died. It was the most terrifying and inspiring thing she had ever witnessed. The humans fought like beings possessed, turning every ship into a weapon, every death into a victory, every moment of survival into another chance to hurt their enemies. They used tactics that no sane military would consider, ramming attacks that destroyed both vessels, weapons that damaged their own ships as much as the enemy's, and strategies that depended on individual crews making split-second decisions that could doom their entire formation. And somehow, impossibly, they were still winning. Captain, Tim Aaron said in amazement, the alien fleet is taking massive casualties. They've lost over 3,000 ships. It was true. The hegemony's perfect formations were dissolving under the human assault, their superior numbers meaningless against an enemy that seemed to care nothing for conventional tactics or self-preservation. Every human ship that died took multiple alien vessels with it, and their remaining forces were growing more dangerous as the battle continued. But there were just too many aliens. For every hegemony ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The human fleet was being systematically overwhelmed despite their incredible skill and ferocity. ZYX was watching the final act of a tragedy, the death of a species that had fought harder than any beings in galactic history. Soon there would be nothing left but wreckage and the memory of warriors who had refused to surrender even when faced with annihilation. Then her sensors detected something that made her question her own sanity. Captain, Zelnara said in a voice barely above a whisper, I'm detecting new hyperspace signatures. Massive ones. Something is coming. The space around Sol erupted with new arrivals, but these weren't alien ships. They were human vessels, but unlike anything they'd seen before. These ships were enormous, some of them larger than the alien dreadnoughts, and they moved with a coordination that suggested a level of technology far beyond what the current human fleet possessed. This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Hayes aboard the UES Retribution, came a new voice, older and grimmer than Admiral Chen's. Sorry we're late to the party, Sarah. We had to come from Proxima Centauri, and the new drives are still being calibrated. Marcus? Admiral Chen's voice carried disbelief and hope in equal measure. How many ships do you have? About 1,500, all brand new. We've been building them in the Proxima system for the past 2 years, just in case someone decided to bring friends to our housewarming party. 1,500 ships. ZYX stared at her tactical display in disbelief. The humans had secretly built an entire second fleet in another star system, using technology that shouldn't have existed. The vessels she was looking at were clearly more advanced than anything currently fighting in the Sol system, incorporating lessons learned from the earlier battles and weapons that pushed the boundaries of known physics even further.
Admiral Hayes, Admiral Chen said, these are hegemony frontline units.
They're not like the ships we fought earlier.
I noticed, Hayes replied dryly. That's why we brought the experimental weapons.
All ships, this is Fleet Admiral Hayes. Today we're testing some new toys that the research boys have been working on.
Try not to accidentally blow up any planets.
What followed was less a battle than a demonstration of what happened when a species that had evolved to kill everything on their planet turned their full attention to the problem of warfare.
The new human weapons were things of beauty and terror that seemed to warp reality itself around their targets.
They fired projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, beams that aged their targets to dust in seconds, and missiles that somehow convinced enemy ships to destroy themselves. The alien hegemony found themselves facing an enemy that had spent the first battle learning how they fought, then gone away and built specific weapons to counter every advantage they possessed. Where the aliens had energy shields, the humans had weapons that ignored them. Where the aliens had armor that could withstand stellar temperatures, the humans had ammunition that attacked the molecular bonds holding it together. Where the aliens had superior numbers, the humans had weapons that turned entire formations into expanding clouds of plasma.
This is Admiral Hayes to the alien fleet, came the broadcast.
You made a mistake when you decided to threaten humanity. We're not like the other species you've encountered.
We don't surrender, we don't retreat, and we don't forget.
You wanted to see what a Deathworld species could do when properly motivated.
Congratulations, you're about to become a textbook example.
The second phase of the battle was even more brutal than the first, but now the brutality was flowing in the opposite direction. The human fleet moved through the alien formations like a force of nature, destroying everything in their path with weapons that seemed to violate several laws of physics. Ships that had seemed invincible minutes earlier were torn apart by attacks they couldn't even detect, let alone defend against. And through it all, the humans maintained their strange mixture of professionalism and enthusiasm. They celebrated each victory, mourned each loss, and treated the systematic destruction of an alien armada like a difficult but satisfying job that needed to be done.
Captain, Science Officer Tim Aaron said quietly, the alien fleet is requesting permission to surrender. ZYX-Thera felt a moment of relief. Perhaps this madness would end without the complete destruction of either fleet.
This is Admiral Hayes responding to Hegemony's surrender request, came the human response.
Surrender denied. You came here to commit genocide. The only terms we're offering are complete and unconditional extermination.
The words sent a chill through the bridge of the Serenity's dawn. This wasn't warfare anymore, it was an execution.
Admiral Hayes, ZYX-Thera transmitted, surely you're not going to destroy ships that are trying to surrender?
The pause before the human admiral responded was long enough to make her wonder if he'd heard her.
Captain, these beings came here to kill every man, woman, and child on Earth.
They've already destroyed 4 Confederation outposts and murdered millions of innocent civilians. They don't get to surrender just because they've discovered they bit off more than they could chew.
But Admiral, the Confederation believes in mercy, in the possibility of redemption.
Captain, Admiral Hayes interrupted, your Confederation didn't evolve on a world where everything was trying to kill them from the moment they were born.
You don't understand what mercy means to a predator.
We show mercy to those who deserve it. We show merciless destruction to those who threaten our cubs.
The human fleet continued its systematic destruction of the alien armada, refusing to accept surrender and ignoring pleas for mercy. Ship after ship vanished in explosions that lit up the solar system until finally, the last hegemony vessel was reduced to glowing debris.
Silence fell across the Sol system like a blanket, broken only by the crackling of cooling metal and the whisper of solar wind through the wreckage. The humans had won, but at a cost that staggered the imagination. Nearly half their original fleet was gone, and even the new arrivals had taken significant casualties.
This is Admiral Chen to the Confederation vessel, came the transmission.
The immediate threat has been neutralized, but this is far from over.
The hegemony has fleets throughout the galaxy, and they're not going to ignore what happened here today.
Admiral, ZYX-Thera replied, what you've accomplished here is remarkable, but surely now is the time for diplomacy. for finding a peaceful solution. Captain, Admiral Hayes interrupted, there is no peaceful solution with a species that practices genocide as a hobby. We've just bought the galaxy some time, but the hegemony is going to come back with everything they have. When they do, we'll be ready for them. What do you mean? We mean, Admiral Chen said grimly, that the age of peaceful exploration is over. The galaxy is at war, whether it wants to admit it or not. The hegemony won't stop with Earth, and they won't be impressed by diplomatic protests or stern letters from the Confederation Council. So what do you propose? We propose, Admiral Hayes said, that someone needs to teach the peaceful species of this galaxy how to fight. And we propose that someone needs to hunt down every hegemony fleet in known space and destroy them before they can destroy anyone else. ZYXthera felt a chill run down her spine. You're talking about a war of extermination. We're talking about survival, Admiral Chen corrected. The hegemony made the rules when they declared their intention to exterminate all inferior species. We're just playing by the rules they chose. As the Serenity's Dawn prepared to depart the Sol system, ZYXthera found herself looking back at the wreckage of the greatest space battle in galactic history. Scattered among the debris were the remains of ships and crews that had fought with a ferocity she could barely comprehend, dying not just to protect their own world but to buy time for species they'd never met. The humans had revealed themselves to be something unprecedented in galactic civilization, a species that had turned violence into an art form, but only in service of protecting those they cared about. They were terrifying and beautiful, brutal and compassionate, aggressive and protective all at the same time. And they were preparing to take their war to the stars. Captain, Communications Officer Zelnara said quietly, we're receiving a final transmission from Admiral Hayes. Put it through. Captain ZYXthera, the human admiral said, I want you to carry a message back to the Confederation Council. Tell them that Earth stands ready to defend any species that's willing to stand with us against the hegemony. Tell them that we're not asking them to become warriors, we know that's not in their nature.